How's it going? Gon here. Let's talk about engines.
I'm obsessed. What a beautiful piece of human endeavor. It gave us Spunky Skunk after all. That game is great and all, but it wasn't done overnight. Making a video game is something that takes time and various builds are created throughout development. Some public, some not, and that's where we get into the neat stuff. Video game prototype builds are rarely released to the public, primarily early ones that most of the time look nothing like the game we got. While some are documented and preserved online, there's the forbidden ones, builds that are completely lost and unplayable.
Yup, it's happening. Let's talk about lost game prototypes and see how different our favorite games were.
Super Mario 6 on the Nintendo 6 is lost media? You've probably heard of this one. Super Mario 64 was Mario's first 3D game and became one of the most influential video games of all time. It released in 1996 and was a launch title for the N64. Big deal. Prior to its release, various demos and builds were shown throughout various events like E3 and Space World. But the build that everyone won't shut up about is the Space World 95 demo. A completely lost early demo of Mario 64 that looks a little different. In that year's Space World, Nintendo's focus was on their upcoming console, the Nintendo Ultra 64. Boy am I glad they kept that name. Actually, it was already called N64 at this point, and not only was the first time a Mario 64 demo was available to the public, but also the first time the game was shown to the world. We only have a few videos and screenshots of this build, and from what we have, we can notice a lot of differences. The HUD looks different and has a different layout with the star and coin counters stacked on top of each other for some reason. The life meter was also a bit different, and honestly, I much prefer this look. Enough of that. Let's talk about Peach's Castle and how it reeks. The castle's lobby in this build looks really plain, and they definitely made the right call to change the colors. Looking at other worlds like Whomp's Fortress and Cool Mountain, we can also see some changes. Thwomp looks like someone called Thwomp, and the penguin looks straight out of my vintage Kellogg's mini Wits box. Yeah, Kellogg's ran a promotion where you could win a free copy of Mario 64 back in 1996, and it featured an early model of the penguins from Cool Mountain. At this point of development, Mario's voice lines weren't recorded yet, so Nintendo opted in using voice lines from the Warner Bros. Archives as a placeholder for Mario's voice. And he sounds like an impregnated bear. Man, I didn't even scratch the surface of this build. Thanks to the 2020 Giga Leak, a bunch of unused stuff and models from the 95 demo were discovered, and oh boy. Let's just say that Mario 64 has a huge catalog of cut content and it's pretty interesting to say the least. Even though the Giga Leak gave us some assets and beta levels, the Space World 95 demo still remains unplayable. I can tell this is a near impossible thing to find on the wild, but there's a community online that's dedicated to rebuild and recreate the lost demo, and that's pretty neat. Well, of course this isn't the only lost build. There's an older one that its existence was found on a patent for the Ultra 64, which featured these two images of Peach's Castle in black and white. Much isn't known, but one thing's for certain. It's old as fuck. Maybe one day I'll dive deeper into the lost builds of Mario 64, but for now, let's stick with the big R.
Sure.
Mario Kart 64 is one of the best racing games on the N64, only behind F-Zero X, Diddy Kong Racing, Wave Race 64, Excite Bike 64, Hot Wheels Turbo Race. Alright, I'll admit, it has some pretty noticeable flaws. Why can't I play as my favorite Yoshi's Island character, Naval Piranha? I guess Kamek works too. Mario Kart 64 was first shown to the public at Space World 95, the same event we got at Mario 64 demo I previously talked about, with the title Super Mario Kart R. And don't be mistaken, the R doesn't stand for racing. Nope, it's for rendered, so Super Mario Kart Rendered. Still better than Wii. First things first, this title screen is glorious, and it's all thanks to that little man. Kamek was originally part of the roster instead of Donkey Kong. It's unknown why Nintendo decided to cut Kamek from Mario Kart 64, but it would have been more questionable if they kept him and left DK out. Look, I love this character, but they made the wise decision keeping Donkey Kong. You can't have a Mario Kart game without Donkey Kong or any other ape. Being Kamek must suck. Not only he had to wait more than 20 years for its Mario Kart debut, but it had to be the mobile game, and then get reduced to an item after being playable in a half-baked DLC. Looking at the gameplay, it looks virtually the same with some oddities. We have a speed meter instead of a mini-map of the track, and the character icons look really weird, and Yoshi wants to eat my soul. A speech bubble would also appear if you hit an obstacle or a part of the track. And speaking of tracks, 4 courses were featured on the video, and all of them except Luigi Raceway look almost finalized, especially Choco Mountain, which is no surprise since we have so much footage of it. But one of the most interesting parts of this build are the cut items. The feather item from Super Mario Kart was originally supposed to be in Mario Kart 64, but it never happened, and we only got the feather item back properly in Mario Kart World. There's also some completely random items that we don't know how they could have worked, but I have some theories. Here we have this 10-ton weight which could have possibly worked like the Thundercloud from Mario Kart Wii. You have to pass it on to another player before getting crushed. The Yoshi egg could have been like the one from Double Dash, working similarly to a green or red shell. And then we have the marble item, which would basically be a banana peel clone. Again, none of these are confirmed. I'm just making stuff up by looking at the crispy low-res image. Even after the Giga Leak and discovering a bunch of unused assets, this early build of Mario Kart 64 still remains lost media, and I don't think Nintendo's releasing this anytime soon, cause they never do.
Wow, Gon, look at you with your Mario knowledge. Can you talk about a non-Mario game?
Who are you? And how did you break into my house?
Wii Sports. Not a Mario game. Yup, let's talk about good old Wii Sports. The game every Nintendo fan has played at some point of time of their lives. But I'm different. I never played Wii Sports. And that's something that'll never change. I like how it looks in my resume. Anywho, the development of Wii Sports began sometime in 2005, and the earliest known build featured...
Oh, come on!
Instead of the Miis, we had our good friend Mario, and tennis was the only game available. Did they forget Mario Tennis was a thing? Now, to be fair, we had a precursor of the Miis, and at this point of development, they weren't yet customizable. Aside from these two images, we don't know much about this version of the game. Fast forward to E3 2006, Nintendo unveiled Wii Sports for the first time, and 4 tech demos were available at the event. We had ones for tennis, baseball, golf, and airplane, which was scrapped and reworked into Island Flyover for Wii Sports Resort. And speaking of the airplane tech demo, an early version of Woohoo Island from Wii Sports Resort was featured on the demo. Which begs the question, did Nintendo create Wii Sports Resort because of this scrapped airplane demo? That's actually a good question. In general, the other demos look and play similarly to the final game. Just some small differences like the HUD, some sound effects, and the lighting, which makes it more cartoony than the realistic lighting they opted for the finished product. But we have to address the elephant in the room. The Miis can hear? Yup, the Miis originally had ears before Nintendo took their hearing rights, and finally gave them back 20 years later. With the 2020 Giga Leak, we got some screenshots from these demos, including one featuring a Mii using a jetpack. Now what the f is that all about? Hopefully someday we'll get an answer to that when someone finally finds the E3 2006 build of Wii Sports, cause I'm dying to pilot some airplanes on anything but Wii Sports Resort. Same could be said about other games, but certainly not Mother 3. Mother 3 was the final entry on the Mother/Earthbound trilogy, and it released on the Game Boy Advance in 2006, one of the last games released on that system. But it wasn't supposed to be like that. The game spent 12 years in development hell and was cancelled at some point before it came out. Mother 3 began development for the SNES, shortly after the release of Mother 2. But then it shifted to the N64 add-on, the N64 disk drive that only released in Japan since it flopped hard. The game was revealed at Space World 1997, and a playable demo for Mother 3 was available later at Space World 1999. On a side note, according to press coverage at the time, the game would receive an English localization under the name Earthbound 64. Yeah, we could have gotten an official English release of Mother 3 if more people bought that garbage.
I'm doing my part as a gamer.
Where is it, Nintendo? Surprisingly enough, looking at the trailer, the story and the characters were already established at this point. This is literally Mother 3 for the GBA in 3D. Some designs look a bit off like Lucas and Duster, but their overall role was already present. Look, I'm all in for a 3D Mother game, that would have been nuts! But I like how consistent this series is in keeping it 2D with a top view perspective. Oh, and shifting from this cute-ass art style to this gritty nonsense would have been something people call bad. According to Brandon Sector, a foreign playtester who worked on the GBA version of Mother 3, he was able to play a prototype version of Earthbound 64, but the game crashed upon finishing the first chapter of the game. So a prototype does exist, but getting any hands on it would be as difficult as Nintendo translating Mother 3. It could happen, but I'm not getting any hopes up. Did you know there's a lost prototype build of Mega Man 4? Me neither. The earliest build was shown off at Tokyo Game Show 1991 and it was far from complete. Stuff like character icons of the bosses and their names were absent, and the stages had different backgrounds and enemy placements. That's normal for a prototype, nothing special. But the most intriguing part of this version is a scrapped mini-boss that we never got in the final game. A giant sphinx that you would encounter on Pharaoh Man's stage. Gaming magazines like EGM reported on this prototype and builds made afterwards. But if you weren't at Tokyo Game Show back in the 90s, there's no shot you can play this version.
Was that out of the way? Who the f are you? And why do you look like me?
Hi, I'm Salas von Virgo. Subscribe to the TheColossalGon channel to not miss a single episode of this guy.
Who are you talking to? I have a better idea. What if instead of fighting, we Resident are evil?
I love the Resident Evil franchise, and surprisingly I never yapped about it. It's the perfect blend between survival horror and action. Except RE6, that game is straight up action and fun fact, it hurts my head. Resident Evil is one of the most iconic gaming franchises of all time, and it's all that damn bastard's fault. Resident Evil was already pretty popular with the first 3 games on the PS1, but it's thanks to Resident Evil 4 it reached that cultural status. It was a great game and sold over 15 million copies. That's more than Babe! RE4 came out in 2005. But its development goes back to 2001 with builds that resemble little of the game we got. The very first version of Resident Evil 4 was way more action-based and it's believed that it was repurposed into Devil May Cry on the PS2, but we don't have any footage. The game was first shown at Tokyo Game Show 2002, and in this second version, Leon could have possibly wielded supernatural abilities. We don't know how he would acquire that ability, but it's speculated that Leon would be infected with the virus and that's how he gains his powers. It was still set in Europe, but we would be against Umbrella Europe instead of Los Illuminados. Later at E3 2003, we got the second trailer, and despite still having that supernatural feel to it, some things were changed. For example, we're on a mansion instead of an airship, and a new enemy called Hookman makes an appearance. We don't see much of this doofus, but we know that he was another spirit. Thank God we got Salazar. This version of Resident Evil 4 would have featured a gimmick similar to Metroid Prime 2 and Silent Hill 2 with the existence of a parallel world you could travel to, but it was proven too difficult to make due to the GameCube's limitations. Apparently, people were pleased with this version and some compared it to Silent Hill in terms of aesthetic, which you can't deny. Just look at James and Leon, they both lost their wives. Even after the fans' praises, Capcom decided to scrap this version and start over from scratch for reasons. It was said that they were unable to develop realistic light animations, and the spirits had to be scrapped. There can only be one good ghost shooter. Bottom line, the GameCube couldn't handle shit, and this version deviated much from the previous Resident Evils. Capcom cooked up a final version removing the hallucination mechanics and replacing them with your run-of-the-mill zombies called Debaman. Production was quickly halted due to fear of being too formulaic, and it was never shown to the public. Then, 2 years later, we got one of the best Resident Evil games of all time, and aside from trailers, screenshots and concept art, these beta versions are completely unplayable. But we can always dream about them. If you think Resident Evil 4 is the only game in the series with the weird-ass beta build, have you played any of these games? Of course there's more. After Resident Evil 6, everybody was tired of these games. In a span of 6 mainline games, we went from pure survival horror with a little bit of action to a full-blown action game with zombies. RE6 wasn't a flop by all means, but people were fatigued and Capcom knew they had to shake things up. So after 5 years of development, we got Resident Evil 7, a completely different game from its predecessor, now fully embracing what made the original game so unique. But that wasn't supposed to be the case. See, in 2023, 2 pieces of concept art were leaked online of the original idea of RE7. The game was gonna take place in a Venice-inspired city and Leon and Sherry Birkin were the original protagonists. Just looking at these images, I can tell this game was gonna suck ass. I don't hate RE5, but this game looks just like it, and I don't like it one bit. This version actually entered development in 2012 and had a fully completed demo ready for release, but that's long lost. Thankfully, due to negative reception from RE6, Capcom restarted development and we got a really good Resident Evil game. It's better than RE6.
So let me get this straight. Gold is better than shit?
But is it better than Borderlands?
Yes. Yes, it is. Borderlands is a series of shooter games made by Gearbox Software. The first game released in 2009 and it made a good impression with its unique art style and humor. If you've ever played Borderlands, or heck, just look at some gameplay, you can see that it has a distinct look for a shooter of the era, but it wasn't supposed to be that way. Yes, Borderlands was first revealed on an issue of Game Informer from September 2007, and we got a trailer and an inside look at E3 2008, and I hate to come out as negative, but this looks like a Rage clone, and Rage wasn't even out when Borderlands came out. Halo, Gears, Fallout, Rage. This version of Borderlands was compared to death to those games, and yeah, at its core it's Borderlands, but the visuals weren't that interesting. Based on the trailer, it seems they were gonna take a darker approach compared to the final game, but maybe that's because of the realistic art style. This version was shown a couple of times at events and conferences, but it was never made playable to the public, and I wonder why. They did give an inside look into the game back in E3, why did they never release a demo?
Release the demo, or I'll force myself to finish Team Buddies. You have no idea what I went through.
The preservation of video games is something important, and I don't see why prototype builds of said games aren't too. Seeing how these iconic video games look like during development is something pretty neat to say the least. It's like an alternate reality where Doki Doki Panic released in the US instead of Mario 2. Speaking of which, did you know Mario 2 is the American version of Doki Doki Panic on the Famicom?
Wow!
I didn't know that. I feel like I've learned some valuable stuff here.
That's virginity to you. Next, you gotta learn about Underworld.
Thanks. I'm keeping this.
Sure, it might come in handy someday. It didn't for me.
Go on. I guess there's more to life than fighting. There's Underworld: The Eternal War for the PS2.
That guy was sweating like crazy. My hand is soaked.